What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And this one will break down what's going on with Tesla stock and what you should be watching for moving forward. I'm also going to talk about the overall market, what's going on with the news affecting Tesla and the markets, what you should be watching for on Tesla SPY and the QQQ going into the pre-market. And before I break things down about all this information, before I get into any more details about what's going to happen to Tesla stock, in my opinion, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends very soon, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, so Tesla's up about 0.5% in the pre-market, trying to pop up a little bit. And so far, it's looking kind of okay. But I just want to warn you guys that Tesla has a tendency of popping, then dropping every single morning. It's been doing this for the last 5 days. So if you look at last Monday, Tesla popped to about 284, then it dropped after that and traded sideways. We saw the same thing, a pop and drop before this thing started pushing on Wednesday. This was after the 4th of July. On Thursday of last week, it popped, then dropped even bigger by a bigger amount, and we saw a bigger decline on Tesla after that. And then for Friday, it popped, then dropped, then popped again, and then came right back down. So you can see lots of volatility in the stock, but one thing you can infer is that it's making lower highs. The high used to be at 284, then 283, then 280, so it is slowly declining, and it is making lower lows technically as it continues to decline even more. So the price action is looking more bearish from a technical standpoint. Even if the news is coming out and it's looking pretty decent, Tesla is starting to slow down, and overall, this is just worth noting. Now, I also want to add that we have some interesting catalysts for the week before I talk about the technicals. Just know that the futures were pretty flat ahead of the key inflationary data this week. Inflationary data is coming out on Wednesday. We have the CPI report that's going to be very important, so make sure you pay attention to that. And then for the economic data, I just want to note that we have the consumer inflationary expectations coming out at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. I know it says like 8 o'clock a.m. on my screen, but that's actually in Pacific time. So most people are going to be watching the markets looking at the New York time, and that's more important in my opinion. So just as a reminder, at 10 o'clock a.m., we have Barr giving a speech, so one Fed speaker. At 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern time, okay, we have Daly giving a speech from the Fed, then Messner's giving a speech as well. Then we have the consumer inflationary expectations at 11 a.m. So a Fed speaker is going to be coming almost every hour for the first couple of hours. Then last but not least, at around noon Eastern time, at 12 o'clock p.m., we have Bostic from the Fed giving a speech. And this guy's been all over the place. He used to be hawkish. The last time he spoke, he was being dovish. So be very careful. He's going to affect the markets at 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. Now, when it comes to Tesla, we had some new news that came out. Some of these analysts are upgrading Tesla and giving it better price targets. We also saw Tesla deliver over 74,000, deliveries in June, and exports reached about 19,000 in China. So that's some very, very good news for Tesla. There's also news about how there are some concerns about their margins ahead of the Q2 earnings coming out from some analysts. We also saw this news coming out about how we're getting some nice upgrades for Tesla again from some other analysts, at least for the longer term, saying that Tesla is once again very capable of beating the markets and outperforming. There's also news that came out right here about how we got some more hikes from Wall Street. So this is making some headlines, which is some good news for Tesla. But still be very careful because Tesla got some good news as well on Friday, but the stock price still managed to slow down despite it. And we also saw this right here. There's still some rising estimates for earnings. So Tesla has some very high expectations for earnings, which are less than 2 weeks away. So just be ready for that as well. Anyways, now let's talk about the charts, what's going on with the market. So Tesla's trying to pop in the pre-market. It is currently testing the 50 EMA as resistance around this 275 area. Tesla has a tendency of popping near the open. So we're going to be watching this 270 to 280 area. And that was the previous high it made going into last Friday. So I'm going to be watching this resistance right here between 270 to 280, and I think it's going to likely try to test that. And the odds favor it popping and dropping as it has been doing for the last couple of trading days. So it might pop a little bit more, maybe see like 278 or so, maybe a little higher, then end up dropping. It's also gapping up, so be very careful. Tesla has a gap now below that's forming. So it might come down to fill that gap as time goes on. And then there's a good chance it's going to pop and drop and just continue to trade sideways and maybe even decline more. And then CPI is coming out by Wednesday, so that's going to have a bigger effect on Tesla. But I'm anticipating that the overall trend on Tesla is looking a little bit more bearish as we have this unfilled gap right here. Tesla is starting to decline a bit. So there's a good chance it's going to retest like 270 over the next couple of days. And if it breaks below that, the odds favor more downside and a break all the way down to like 268, 265, or even lower levels like that. So it's more likely for that to happen. So we're going to be watching support around there. But I think it's going to try to pop a little bit, then reject, as will many stocks out there. All right, so that's what I'm seeing on Tesla. Make sure you watch 278 and 280 as resistance, 282.8 as well if it does break above that. I'm going to look for a pop around there, then a rejection, and then support's going to be around 275. 272, that zone right there, 271.8, which is our 200 EMA, 270.25, 268, and then below that, if it drops, we're going to be watching like 266. So watch those levels carefully. Look for a pop and drop on Tesla, and be very careful for today. For SPY, I'm seeing something very similar. It's very flat in the pre-market, so we'll have to wait and see what happens with it as well. Let me just add that SPY may try to test the 50 and 200 EMAs around this 439 area. If it manages to break above that, watch 440. Then there's also like 442 and etc. But I don't really think SPY is going to pump that hard. It really depends on what the Fed speakers say as well. But the odds favor from a technical standpoint, this thing popping, then dropping, trading very sideways. Watch support around this like 438 area, 437.06. And then below that, we're going to be watching the 436 zone, like 436.25 to 436.65. The entire zone has lots of chop. So I think this thing is going to likely try to pop a little bit, test some of these EMAs, and slow down as time goes on. Trade very flat, and then it's going to likely continue to remain flat or even a little bit red as we approach CPI by Wednesday. The Fed speakers will affect it too, but I do believe the odds favor it being very flat or even seeing some downside. If it breaks below 436, that's going to be your target of more downside to like the 435 or even 433s. And I think there's a good chance it's going to eventually happen. So please be very careful on SPY. It may start off very flat and then eventually see downside. For the QQQ, before I end the video, this is slowly making lower highs. If you just look at it, it's been continuing to downtrend overall. And now that's on the smaller time frames. It's actually rejecting off the 15,200 EMAs as well. So I'd be very careful. Let's see if it breaks above this. If it breaks above these EMAs, it could go all the way up to 368 and potentially 370. If it manages to reject off them, we're going to be watching 365, 363.5, and 362. I think it's going to try to pop a little bit more, maybe test like 368 or so, then reject and start coming down to like 365, even 363 potentially. So just be very careful. That's just my prediction. But, once again, just watch for confirmation just to be safe. And if it breaks below 363, that's going to be like a bigger bearish signal. So just be very careful with it. Tesla's trying to pop right now. Now it's up like 0.6%. It's trying to push up a little bit more. So watch this all very carefully. Going to be looking for another pop on Tesla and likely rejection. So be very careful. Watch support and resistance and do what you have to do, guys. All right. Thank you all so much for listening. Be open-minded. Watch every single level. And just know, right, sometimes predictions don't always play out. Always be open-minded anyways. But I do believe there's a good chance that Tesla will eventually decline, looking at the current trend going over the next couple of days. All right. So have a good day, everyone. Please have a great day trading. Remain very, very conscientious, and I'll see you guys very soon for the intraday update. Tesla to the moon alongside the whole market, as the long term is still incredibly bright. And peace out.